the bottom line is that it really only takes one person out there to connect with who loves your story. And if you can get yourself to persevere, it's never too late. You're never too old for it.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another You May Contribute-A-Verse. I'm Josh Munkin, joined by my co-host Brenna Jenneret and podcast wizard John Seymour for another in what has become 100-plus delightful and amazing conversations with Kidlit creators. Our guest this week is Dianna Wilson Sirkovsky, who was just so pleasant and such a delight to talk to. She has two books out in the world. 2021 release James's Reading Rescue and 2023's Just One Pebble. Both of these very heartwarming stories, very much in the spirit of what we have been doing with the podcast in the past several weeks, which is to focus on the spirit of giving, focus on the spirit of, not in a Christmas sense, but just in a general sense, but focus on the spirit of kindness and things, ways that so much of Kidlit aligns with progressive, human-centered, kind values. And again, Dianna's work really aligns with that. So hope you enjoy this conversation. Here is Dianna Wilson Sirkovsky's verse.
Sure, no problem. Yep.
God, that phone presence never stopped me before.
I know, right? Mine is always like buzzing in the background. Mm-hmm. I try to keep it, I usually just keep it on vibrate all the time so that I don't have to deal with the noise of it. But on the podcast, everything gets picked up sometimes, and then I hear it just going off.
Yeah. You know what? That's real life,
especially
though, right?
If the critique group is chatty. Yeah. I'm talking to you, Emily, Angel, Sharon, and Mari.
Ooh, we're going to just put them on blast.
Yeah. But we have a text thread, and so we talk there's always something
sorry about that.
So
yeah.
No problem. Yeah, no problem. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm very excited. So I have read. Hold on, let me get the title right. So I have read James's Reading Rescue. Very sweet, really cute, great message.
Thank you.
But I have not been able to get my hands on Just One Pebble, and I would love to hear all about that one.
Sure. Well, I discovered the story of this young man, Braden Mannering, on the Greater Good site, which was a site that I always visit because you can click and raise funds for all sorts of various good causes. And there was a story about him on the Food Network. And not the Food Network, the feeding community sort of network thing that they support. And I thought it was just the most amazing story. It started when he was 9 years old. He's 20 now, but the story that I read was when he was 9. And he had won a healthy lunch contest at his elementary school. It was sponsored. It was a countrywide contest, and he was the Delaware winner. So with the other state winners, he went to a luncheon at the White House with Michelle Obama.
Oh my gosh.
She was so interested in promoting healthy eating for kids in schools and stuff. So this was her initiative. So he went to the White House with these other children.
Wow.
And while they were there, Michelle Obama challenged these kids to go back and move this positive experience forward in some way in their communities. So, a little 9-year-old, I'm sure he really didn't know much of what he could do. But one day he and his mom were driving. It was raining and a miserable day. And he saw a homeless man on the sidewalk with no umbrella, nothing. And he couldn't get the image of this man out of his mind. So when they got home, he packed a bag with some food and a bottle of water and an umbrella. And he asked his mom if she would drive him back so that he could give it to this man. So she did. And he was, not sure maybe how it would be received, but he gave it to the man. He was very grateful. And he realized that this was something that he could do, something that a 9-year-old could do, give out bags of food and support and comfort to people. And so he started his own nonprofit called Bray's Brown Bags, or they call it 3B for short. And so it has become a whole movement in his community and beyond. To date, prior to COVID, when I'm sure things slowed down somewhat at that point, but they've given out over 15,000 bags. And also inside the bag is always a note from Braden, a personal note to the person that he's giving the bag to, and a list that he and his mother compiled of community support groups in the area, food kitchens, shelters for, whatever people might need. In the contents of the bag changes a little bit from season to season. In winter, they would put in gloves, hand warmers, and when they do bags for children, they always try to put in a book. And so that's how it all started. And he's just the most amazing he's a young man now. But the title of the book, Just One Pebble, comes from something that his mother said to him, his mom, Christy, who was, of course, very involved in this until this complete journey. And she said that, good deeds spread like a pebble dropped in water. And she said that she hoped that 3B would have a ripple effect in the community, which, of course, it's had an enormous ripple effect. And it spread to other schools. It spread to church groups and to scouting groups, anywhere where kids gather together who can work together to do something positive. And I did read that it also has spread even outside of the state.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's an amazing. He formed quite a bond, apparently, with Mrs. Obama. And he was actually invited back to President Obama's second inauguration.
Oh, my gosh.
I like to imagine that he packed President Obama's lunch that day.
I'd like to think that too, but I doubt it.
In the absence of confirmation, we'll just believe that. I'm stuck on this little 9-year-old boy's level of commitment. Like not to suggest that my own children are not magnanimous and generous, of spirit, but the notion of getting them to write 15,000 individual notes is unfathomable.
Yeah.
So he's really something.
Yeah, I think is an extraordinary boy. I agree with you. I think, I have children, my son and daughter, also very kind-hearted and happy to help, but no idea how to even begin something such as this. But, his mom was, of course, a huge support. And they started slow, just filling bags at home, self-financed by the family, and would go around the community and give to people. And as it became more entrenched in the community and Braden became a little bit more known, I think, to people on the street and stuff. I mean, there are people that have come up to him and thanked him for basically saving their life.
Oh,
the fact that someone in the community, and I'm just assuming this because he hasn't said, but, that somebody reached out and cared enough to give them something and then to give them a list of places where they could seek further help and that sort of thing. So I thought that was pretty amazing for a kid.
Yeah, not only that level of commitment, like Josh said, but that level of empathy. Because, I feel like every parent sort of struggles with how do I teach my kid empathy in a meaningful way? Especially a kid who is, sort of well taken care of and has, all of the things that they need. Like, it's really hard to sort of show them what it might feel like not to have somewhere to live or not to have clothes or food.
If they haven't experienced
how
that
do
themselves.
Right. Like, their baseline is very much like those things are just a given. And so for him to imagine, for him to imagine in that way, to empathize in that way so deeply and to do something about it is just, it is incredible. And I wanted to ask, so were you able to meet Braden and his mom? Did you chat with them for this book to do your research?
We haven't met personally, but we did have a Zoom together with the publisher. And when things were underway.
So they know
his mom and I correspond back and forth.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah. So they know all about the book. So that makes me think, do they do they now still do the program? Is the program still going? And
Yes.
if it is, and they're helping with kids, you said that books go into the bags for kids. Is this book something that might be included in the bag for the children?
I can't answer that. I don't know for sure. I would think probably not, because it's so big. It's a big book. And you can see that's behind me. And also quite expensive, I'm sorry to say. Yeah. Books. But I don't know where they get the books. Probably they are donations, I would think, because I think that they've certainly got some donations going on at this point. But I was just to go back to the whole beginning of this, I was just so moved when I read the story of this kid. I mean, I've worked for, my whole life in downtown Montreal, and, have encountered numerous homeless people and, given food to them in my lunches, and they're always just so grateful. I mean, I remember there was this one young man. I was walking to work through the metro, and there was one young man that was always there with his dog. And so I said, here's, take my lunch. I said, I can buy something. And before he ate, he gave some to his dog. And there was another young man also that I met, and I said, I have no money on me, but I said, here, please take my lunch. And he said, I can't take your lunch. He said, what will you have? And I said, you don't need to worry about me. And I just thought this was a story that resonated with me personally. Yeah. And I thought, it's such a child-centered story. And I think what I hope is that it gives kids the insight that everybody can make a difference. And it doesn't have to be on a scale like this. It can be something quiet. It can be something simple. But I think it illuminates the fact that kindness is easy and it's a choice. And we can all make it, and it can be something like holding a door open for somebody, as Braden says, smiling at somebody and maybe making their day better. It doesn't have to be, giving a lunch or giving a dinner or something to somebody. It can be small kindnesses that can really change the course of somebody's day. And so I read it and I thought, I have to write this story. But then, of course, I started Googling madly to see if anybody else had ever written it, and they hadn't. Yep. So I wrote the story. And then I reached out to his mom, and I said, I read the story about Braden. I said, I have written a story. I said, and I said, I would like your approval of it. So I sent them the story, and I said, bear in mind that there has to be a little bit of perhaps fictitious weaving to keep the story together in an arc. And I said, and please don't get your hopes up, because the chances of this getting published is like 1 in a million. I said, I have had one miracle. I have had one book published, but I said it's absolutely no guarantee at all. So, so they read the story. They were excited. They were on board. So I started sending it out everywhere because I don't have an agent. And I did get a response from a publisher who said that they thought it was the best thing they'd read, the most inspiring thing they'd read all year. And they were going to send it to their acquisitions committee. And I thought, great. But then I wrote to my publisher, Clavis, who had published my first book. And I said, I'd love to give you first refusal for this story, because I said, I think it's their type of story. Yeah. And they wrote back. It was sitting in their slush pile. And they wrote back and she said, yeah, she says, we definitely want to run with this story. So I was so excited to be able to write to Braden and his mom and say, you're a book. You're going to be a book. Yes. You're going to get your story's going to get out into the world even farther than it has so far. And that was the best of the best for me, just to be able to tell them we're going.
And they said, oh my God, what does this mean? Do we get to see our book in a couple of months? And you said, no, let's pump the brakes. It takes a little while.
I have to say, Clavis works usually a little bit quicker than a lot of other publishing houses. Like I know if you get a story accepted now, you'll see it, probably 2026 at this point. But they did it within a year. And the lovely thing about Clavis is that they asked the author's input on who we'd like to work with as an illustrator. And
very
which
cool.
Is, absolutely unheard of in the industry, really. And I proposed, I wanted us to approach Sarah, who illustrated my first book. And she was on board, ready to go, but she was working on another project. So it meant that we were delayed by one season's catalog. So instead of summer, we came out fall, but that was perfectly worth the wait. And I was just so delighted to be able to work with her again, because she's just magic, really.
Wow. I mean, talking about this book is sort of just like a warm hug. Like, it feels so, I'm so happy that the story exists and that you were able to make it into a book. Cause I have dabbled in nonfiction, and you sort of, you talk to the people you're supposed to talk to and you tell them I'm writing this book, and they get excited. And then you're like, okay, but
Right.
And then you sort of, right. And then you sort of feel like, oh gosh, like, it's not just me being disappointed now. Like, now I'm, now it's sort of pressure from everybody else too. And you want to make sure to do it justice, and just, I'm so happy that it came together for everybody.
And Sarah did such an amazing job. Like with the first book with James, Reading Rescue, it was sort of cartoonized pictures, that also was based on a true story, but I didn't write it with the true characters. I fictionalized it completely, but it was based on a true story. Whereas with this story, she had to draw Braden and his mom to look like themselves. And she did such a fabulous job. She did just the most amazing job. Really. It was just brilliant. She just brought it to life.
You really can see the life in the characters. For sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She did such a good likeness to the two of them. And the other thing that I was so excited about was that I was then able to ask Braden to contribute a small paragraph to the reader, which has been included at the end of the book.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Will you read it?
I will. I'll read it to you. I'll be happy to do so.
She's getting, for the listening audience, she's getting the book, looking up the passage.
Yep.
Okay. It says, a word from Braden. There's always something we can do to help others around us. We can give people a healthy snack, pick up litter off the ground, read to someone at a senior center, hold the door open for someone, and smile. These are simple ideas for everyday acts of kindness. You never know how a simple act can change the course of someone's day. Maybe your smile will make them smile. Maybe your generosity will encourage them to share. It's my dream to help end hunger. What's your dream? Dream, and then dream bigger. Your friend, Braden. Isn't that awesome?
That's perfect. Yeah.
That always chokes me up when I read it.
Diana, this is like this is maybe the last time that I'll remark on this in this conversation, but just I'm thinking about who Braden is at a 20-year-old man. Most 20-year-olds write notes that say things like "no cap on God," "I'm low-key enthused," or whatever the case is.
LOL.
Nice.
Eloquence expectations are very low for 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
So kudos to Braden.
I mean, this kid,
Wow.
He's amazing. He's done TEDx talk. I mean, he's
Wow.
taught. I mean, I've seen videos of him as a 10-year-old, in front of a huge group of people. And he's just cool and collected, and he would do the whole thing by memory. And if he stumbled a little bit, he just stopped. He'd check his little notes, and he'd go back. No fluff, just calm. And I watched this, and I thought, what an extraordinary boy.
Mm-hmm.
He really
Wow.
is. He really is something special.
Yeah. Do you feel like in the production, in the creation of this book, that you were constrained in any way by the realness of Braden and the fact that the movement that he's starting and continuing to work on is a current thing? I mean, obviously that constrains some of the art in terms of how Braden and his mom are represented on the page and giving it a real feel. But how did that affect your narrative? I mean, especially versus your first book, which is, like you said, entirely fictionalized.
Yeah, I did not feel any constraints. It was very helpful that I could access his Facebook page. And there were numerous articles written about him that I read on the internet. So it was very helpful. I could hear his voice through his writing. on his Facebook page and something. So that made it very easy for me because I didn't have to search for a voice. I could see and hear his voice. So that was quite easy to adapt into the story. There was the odd little fictional thing that would just weave events together. But primarily it was a very easy story to write because it was all sort of documented in ways that I could follow easily. Yeah. And
how long? Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask how long it took for you to sort of get it together to a point where you felt, good about it and you were sending it out. Because it seems like, because some stories are like that, right? They just sort of come together and you just are like, this story was just, it wrote itself. It's meant to be. Was it quick like that? Or was it
quite
more
quick.
difficult?
Yeah, it was quite quick. Of course, I went back and forth with my critique group and I had it professionally critiqued as well by an author that I work with here who's a Canadian author. And it came together really quite quickly. It really did. I can't really remember from the beginning to the point where I sent it out to publishers, but I would say probably no more than 6 months.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like that is pretty.
That's pretty quick. Yeah, that's pretty quick for, in an industry where we can spend 2 years or more tweaking a 500-word story, which to other people is inconceivable, but we're mad and we do it.
Yeah, so essentially just putting the timeline down, you went from concept to a book in your hands in 2 years, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's pretty
under 2 years.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it was. I think like Jenna says, it's one of those stories that it's just waiting in the wings. Just waiting to be set free. And it all happened pretty quickly.
Do you mostly write stories based on real stories like this also? Is that sort of like where you find your inspiration? Or do you also write straight fiction?
Yeah, it was never my plan.
Right.
But with my first story, if I just give you a little background, I also read that story on the internet. And I saw this picture one day of a little boy sitting with a picture book open on his lap, and this cat was leaning over his shoulder looking at the book with him. And I thought, well, that isn't the cutest thing I've ever seen. And so I read the story, and it was about this little boy, a real little boy, who was struggling with reading and whose mom worked at the local cat rescue shelter. So she said, bring your books in and read to the cats, and it'll help to socialize them for adoption, and it'll help you practice. And it did. It was a win-win. He became a great reader and it caught on. Other kids started the program. Other rescues started programs like that. So it's quite a thing now of kids in various places reading to animals. And so that was my first story. And I really connected with that because I'm a huge cat rescue person. My kids grew up with 9 rescue cats in a small house. And my son struggled a bit with reading. So I thought, well, God, this story is made for me.
Yeah, that's perfect. Wow.
But I'd never written a picture book. I knew nothing about all the rules and regulations. But after, a process, it came together and Clavis took the story. And then I wrote a couple of other things that were just pure imaginary play type stories. And then came across Braden and did that one. And I've written several others now based on true stories with kids. And I guess it seems to be my niche. I never set out for it to be.
Yeah,
but sometimes you fall into something and it just seems to work, So, but my other couple of ones I'm still trying to sell. So we'll see.
You just need to find the right true moment to base them on in future revisions.
Yeah, I think that's true. And it takes the one person who reads it and connects with it and says, I'd like to make this into a book. And but it's certainly a challenging process for sure. And as an unagented author, it's a lot of work too.
Yeah. Hey everybody, time for a mid-app break to talk about some books that we appreciate, and would like to uplift. As a reminder, with these several episodes that are being released in advance of the 2024 U.S. election, we are aligning our book review section with the Kidlit for Kamala effort. I encourage you to search social media for hashtag Kidlit for Kamala to understand what this effort is doing, and look for a conversation upcoming with Martha Brokenbrough, one of the founders of this effort, in the next couple of weeks, as the crow flies, as the podcast flies. So here are another set of books from us that align with progressive values, as I said at the outset of the episode, and are things that we consider to be very kindness-centered, human-centered, nature-centered. Brenna's review for the week is We Are Definitely Human by Fang. In a time when we need kindness and inclusiveness more than ever, this book hilariously showcases that no matter how different someone is from you, showing kindness is always, always the right choice. Even if your new friend makes business, has a flying car, and has skin the shade of neon pink, only popular in the 80s, be kind, be human, and help them if they need help. Brilliant take on otherness. You need this book on yourself, is what Brenna wrote. You need this book on yourself, but also on your shelf when you're done putting it on yourself. John's review this week is a charming and earthy forest hike, tapping into nature, as John has a tendency to do, between a mother and a child. On a Mushroom Day by Chris Baker and illustrated by Alexandra Finkeldey, accompanies, I'm sorry if I messed up your last name, Alexandra, accompanies readers through the sights, sounds, and discoveries of mushroom hunting, which is a must for foraging fans. The writing is simple yet informative, and the illustrations beautifully capture the forest's essence with deep, natural tones. The book mixes learning with fun, showing different fungi and their connections to the forest. And here's my review. The idea that people or animals can fit into specific categories is outdated and inaccurate, born of a mindset that works in binaries and simple terms. The world is very gray. Upcoming podcast guest Phaea Crede's book, Jet the Cat is Not a Cat, illustrated by Terry Runyan, shows one cat's struggle to understand herself and to be understood. She tries to fit into other definitions of animalhood because she doesn't feel like she fits into the classic definition of a cat, only to ultimately embrace herself despite her gray areas. And if that is not an encouragement for all of us to shed, pun intended, our rigid labels, I don't know what is. The world doesn't live by red or blue or cat or dog or whatever. It lives by a lot of individuals trying each to do their best in a very confusing and complicated world. Be like Jet. And those are our 3 Kidlit for Kamala reviews for this week. If you would like to support the podcast, I will say now, as I say every time I do this mid-episode break, head over to our Linktree at linktree.com/verseshow for all the episodes and all the ways that you can support us through buying a t-shirt, getting a shout out, being on the show, and supporting us just generally. And so I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode with Dianna Wilson Sirkovsky. So back to that conversation. So you said for James's reading rescue, you kind of, hand waved. It was a process. So I'm curious about what was your process as a relatively new author, like all of us are. Completely ignorant of how complicated this market is.
As ignorant as
right,
for sure. I was sitting there I was sitting on my sofa. I pulled out all my kids' picture books because I kept them because I love them, and I was manually counting the words to see how many words were in those books.
Oh my gosh!
Oh yeah, I mean, we're talking your most basic beginner. So I wrote the story, and I thought, I wonder if it's any good, or I wonder if it's absolutely dreadful, and I didn't know what to do with it. So
you don't know, right? You don't know until you know, because you're just like, well, I
thought it was pretty okay. Yeah. What did I know, right? So, and I went on the internet and I was just, researching authors and stuff. And I came across a Canadian author, Hazel Hutchins, whose books I had read to my kids. And she had a great website and she had a contact email. So I sent her an email. And I said, I introduced myself. I just said, I'm just wondering, what should I do next? And this lovely, lovely woman wrote me back and said, send me your story. I'll read it. Oh. So I did. And she read it. And she gave me some basic things. You have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And so she was really the very first voice that set me on the path of knowing some of the rules and the regulations for writing these little, deceptively simple books. So that was my start. And I'm sure I rewrote that story, I don't know, 10 times minimum, probably more. And then joined a critique group and just sort of started finding me. And I just researched and read stuff. And I had it again, sent it to another American author who offers a critique service. She came back with some great, helpful ideas. This was getting when it was a little bit in a better shape. And she gave me some really helpful suggestions and really helped me to get it to its final iteration. And then I sent it out to 40 publishers, and I heard from 2. One that thought it was lovely, but would maybe take it at a future date, and from Clavis, who said they would be happy to take it. And I think I read the email 3 times. It was during COVID at this time. I was sitting down working on my computer, and I get this email from Clavis, and I'm like, Clavis? And I opened it, and I read it, and I thought, this is a scam for sure. And then read it again. And then I said to my husband, I said, I think I have something here. I said, let me read this to you. I said, does this mean they're going to take it? Does this mean they want to publish my book? So it was just a surreal moment. It really took me a little bit of time to get my head around it.
I have to offer, Dianna, a revision to this story. You took the letter from Clavis, and then you sat down with your cat and read the letter to your cat, right? To make sure
they were all over the place, yes.
In your house, you can't not read to a cat, I guess.
Numerous cats, yeah. We're down to smaller numbers now, sadly, through attrition, but yes. Yeah, so that was an amazing moment.
Wow, and I mean, I feel like nobody publishes their first picture book.
Apparently that's true. I have a very good friend, Lydia Lukides, who's a writer and has a wonderful blog and everything. And when she interviewed me for that book, she said, nobody publishes their first. She says, you have published your very first story. And I said,
yes.
Well, that's true. I hadn't really thought of that.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, publishing any picture book is a small miracle, but your first one, incredible.
I've been extraordinarily lucky. Yeah, extraordinarily lucky. Yeah, and I actually did a Zoom reading of that book with the animal rescue in Pennsylvania, where the story started. So,
a great full circle!
It was.
That's
it was
amazing.
Really fun. Yeah, I read to the kids there who were there reading to the cats. It was really, really a wonderful, as you say, full circle moment.
Oh my gosh! How? So, as an unagented author, and you've never been agented before, no. Is that right, Dianna?
No, I've not.
So, how did you find the negotiation process with Clavis? Not to be too sort of crassly financial, but knowing that this is a big mystery for a lot of people.
Well, and still
nobody knows.
Still remains so to me today, because I really have no idea. I mean, I thought so I tried to educate myself a little bit so I wouldn't be completely idiotic. I read about contracts on the SCBWI website, which was very helpful. I have to say that was very helpful. I read through their contract. Most of it was quite clear. Some of it was a little bit unclear, but I figured that was just because I was being an idiot. And I did have my son-in-law, who's an attorney, look at it. Not that this was his expertise at all.
But still,
but I thought
helpful.
For whatever. And then, of course, I signed everything as it was. I did have a few questions that I sent back to them first before I signed. They answered the questions, and then I signed. And and it was all quite painless. And I still have no idea if it was a good deal or, but I just, But, the bottom line...
You just have to sell more books, right?
Bottom line is I don't write for money. I mean, I'm happy. I'm just thrilled that they're going to take the book. And actually, James has been translated now into 9 languages, including English.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Clavis always does their first run in Dutch. That's their home language. Yeah. So the first one always comes out in Dutch. And 6 months later, it comes in English. And then over the last 2 years, I guess, it's sold in 7 other languages. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the latest we just heard was in German. And when Sarah and I were sent our complimentary copies of Pebble, they included a copy of the Chinese version, and we didn't even know it had sold to China. So that was fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm hopeful that Braden's story will also be picked up and printed in some other languages, because it's really a universal story, right?
Yeah, because literally everywhere has these same sorts of challenges.
Same social problems. Yeah. No country escapes them. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for that.
So Clavis is, just to restate what you just said, a Dutch publisher by home base.
They're in Belgium, which I always thought was more French, but apparently their home language is Dutch. So that was interesting as well.
Inclined to go down a tax implications rabbit hole that I will refrain from doing, because I don't
know anything about it. I know nothing.
It seems very complicated to sell your debut picture book to an international publisher and then have to deal with the logistics around that. But
they deal with all
probably
setup, though.
They just send me the statement and I go, what does this mean?
Yeah.
You sit there and you go, and again, I always send them back a question and say, could you really explain what this means, please? And they do. But, so I mean, I just basically, I'm with them, I'm along for the ride, and sort of whatever they send me is what they send me.
So I want to circle back around just to, because you are unagented. So how has that journey looked? Like, have you decided just to remain unagented and to continue, you'll work with Clavis or, the other agency or the other publishers that might be open to unagented authors? Or are you also subbing, books simultaneously to publishers and to agents? And then if you get the deal, like, did you use that deal to nudge any agents, or how? I'm just curious about how that journey has looked.
Mm-hmm. Well, initially, of course, certainly for the first two books, I was unagented and I don't think I had even submitted to any agents by that point. I have since periodically, queried certain agents that I've been interested in. I know, when people are seriously querying agents, they say send out 100, 150 queries and to everybody and their dog. But I've never done that. I just sort of zero in on the people that I think would be a match, and with no success so far. Sometimes I do both. Sometimes I'll send a story out to publishers and to agents at the same time. But yeah, I mean, no, that's not true. I did submit Pebble to one or two agents, one in particular that I'd met at a workshop, so that she isn't usually open to submissions, but because we met there, and she liked it. She thought it was a good story, but she said she just wasn't really excited enough about it to take it on. And by that point, it had already been accepted to Clavis. So it's
didn't need to worry about that. Yeah,
it's interesting to see. Then you see that, I mean, as hard as these refusals are, and often it's not even just a refusal; it's just silence. You send out stuff and you never hear anything again. It's gone into the void. But it makes you realize that, it's not just because somebody doesn't want it doesn't mean somebody else might not want it. We're all different. Different things speak to us. And, she's a very well-known agent and thought it was a well-written story, but wasn't interested enough in it to take it. And yet it's been published and hopefully well received. I believe it's I'm certainly getting positive comments and stuff. And I really am hopeful that over the next couple of years, it will sell in some other languages, just because I'd love to get Braden's story further than North America.
It certainly seems
and Belgium.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and Belgium.
Yeah. That certainly seems like Clavis's sort of business model is to spread it far and wide, which is interesting.
They're really great, I have to say. With their, they, as far as I can tell, they seem to go to all of these big conferences, like in Bologna and all of these big. So they're certainly out there. Yeah.
I mean, it's just I think of picture book publishing as you sell world English rights or North American English rights, but the approach for Clavis seems to be slightly different. And I know I'm not going to draw back the curtain, with you because it's kind of, it's a mystery. And you seem to be surprised.
I won't have anything concrete to add to that conversation, I'm afraid.
Just producing, I guess my reflection is really just like, just producing a book in English is hard enough. And it's fascinating to think that Clavis's business model is, let's do that, but let's also send it around to, half a dozen countries and worry about those markets and things.
Yeah. No, I have to say they're really great that way. And, there's no guarantee either. I mean, certainly I've sent other manuscripts to Clavis that have been refused, so some they take, some they don't. I did have one story that I thought was right up their alley. I thought it would be exactly what they'd want, and they didn't take it. So you just don't know. It's the big unknown of this industry, an industry of so many unknowns.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, I mean, you obviously have a relationship with them now, right? So I'm sure there are other stories that you've written, because as you said, this is sort of your niche, which is great, because sometimes, you can't find your niche or your voice or whatever it is that you are really good at until much further down the line. Mm-hmm. But it almost feels like it found you in a way, which is like,
stumbled right into it. Yeah.
And it's really been working for you. And I mean, Clavis seems to be like the ultimate partner as well. So, I mean, I hope going forward, that relationship, continues to grow.
I hope so too.
It just seems like
they're lovely to work with.
Great.
Yeah, they're just a great group of people to work with. And as I said, they give the author input into the story. Most authors don't even see the illustrations until they're holding the book in their hands. To be asked if there's someone with whom you might like to work, I mean, I was just floored. I couldn't believe it.
It's a particular gift. Yeah, exactly.
It's an absolute gift to the author, a total gift. Yeah,
I find the small publishers tend to do that because they want to be, more hands-on, which is a huge benefit of working.
It was wonderful. I mean, Sarah and I email back and forth quite frequently when we're working on a project. And, with the first book, she said, do you see James in any particular way? And I said, my son has brown hair and wore glasses and liked the color blue. So he's got brown hair and wears glasses and wears blue in some of the pictures, so it was just lovely things like that. And I really, really wanted the cat in James, Ghost is his name. I wanted him to be black. Absolutely. The cat had to be black. And that was because black cats are the least adopted color. And I just wanted to tie that awareness in. So I did write a little bit about that in the blurb of the story. And she is a cat lover, Sarah, and has a white cat named Luna. So you'll see lots of white cats scattered through James's reading rescue as well. And because I love cats, I put a cat into Just One Pebble as well, as sort of the initiating thing at the very beginning of the story. And so I love animals, and I'd love to write stories about animals. And if it's not really a story animal-centered, then I certainly like to have them there on the periphery.
Yeah.
I want to draw a dotted line. As of recording of this conversation, the most recent episode that we've published is our conversation with Troy Wilson, who is an author. And in that conversation, we talk mostly about his book that is turning 20 years old this year, which is called Perfect Man. However, he does have a cat-centric book called Hat Cat, which is also very heart-tugging and very, very sweet. And one of the things that came out of that conversation is, I think, the point that we're kind of reinforcing here, which is it takes a village to make a book. And you never know. You never know the sort of like personal experience and personal reflections and hidden things that the team that works on your book is going to be inserting into your your work. And I think it's really sweet that it's self-serving in a sense, but it's really sweet to for someone like Sarah to have the ability to like put her cat in a book.
Absolutely.
It's such a fun little Easter egg.
A little touch of personal joy. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I love that book, the Hat Cat. It's just lovely.
Shout out,
very sweet.
Troy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely story.
Yeah, very sweet.
Well,
Yeah.
so let's go, I mean, all the way back to the beginning. Do you come from writing? So all of this seems to be very, very fortunate in terms of, your first story got published, and your two books that have come together with relative speed. And I know it's not like 100%, hit rate. You've written other things, obviously, that haven't gotten published, but to what do you credit your success thus far?
I've been a bibliophile my whole life. Mm-hmm. I'm an avid reader in numerous genres, and I have always loved writing. I mean, I was one of those geeks who loved school. I loved English. I loved history. I loved writing essays. It was a joy to me. In fact, I used to proofread other students' essays before they handed them in. Yeah, so no, I've always wanted to write. I've always wanted to write. I just never really had the time. I was working, raising my children. And I think it's something that I try to say sometimes on social media is that it's never too late to pursue a dream. I think I wrote James I started when I was 60. He was published when I was 62 or 63. And Pebble was published on my 65th birthday. Came out the same day, the day of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I know there's a lot of wonderful writers who are out there producing beautiful work and struggling to get it into the public, struggling to get it published. And it's, I sympathize with it. It is a struggle because we work on our own. I mean, we have wonderful critique groups that we share with and stuff, but it's still a solitary endeavor until you get accepted, and then you're working with a publishing community and stuff. But it's just, and I know it can be so tempting to say, I can't do this anymore. It's just, I've poured my heart into my work and nobody wants it. But the bottom line is that it really only takes one person out there to connect with who loves your story. And if you can get yourself to persevere, it's never too late. You're never too old for it. Take it from me. Old lady who's 65.
Oh no. I'm very happy that you stuck with it, because you put at least two so far, very, very sweet books out into the world.
Yeah. I feel so lucky. I feel just absolutely so lucky. And I'm so happy that these stories are out in the world, because I really hope that they'll be important to some kids who read them.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept so many books that I loved when my children were small. And it's my hope and dream that someone out there will keep my books because they meant something to them.
Dianna, that's very touching. Yeah. Did you? So here's a flip side to that question, related to taking your time and doing it when you feel like it's the right time for you in your life and all that. Did you wrestle with, in any of this journey, imposter syndrome and feelings of legitimacy and all that? I mean, you published your first book, so I'm not sure that you had enough time in the writing journey.
Right. I will be very honest and say that really saved my self-esteem a whole lot.
Right?
A whole lot,
did.
for sure. Because, of course, there were lots of refusals that came, after that, and a few before. But, it really was a great boost to me in terms of, you are legitimate. You can write. But I've always thought I was a good writer. I have to say, even before I knew what that even entailed. So that was a little bit of a misnomer for sure. But I feel that, so many people have amazing stories to tell. And I know that not everything can be published. I get that. There's lots of agents who say, we see wonderful stories that cross our desks, but we just can't take them all. And as disappointing and heartbreaking as that is, and I too have been disappointed with some stories that I thought were really, really meaningful stories, like these two, like on the same level. And yet nobody has wanted them. So sometimes it's that unknown. Like you can't pinpoint why, what's different about this one from this one. And I can't tell you, but it's just the way it is.
At least for Just One Pebble, you could go to any given publisher and say, look how disappointed this boy would be if you didn't buy this book.
Yeah, right? Like, come on.
Don't
you don't want to
break his heart.
disappoint Brady.
Don't do it for me. Do it for him.
Yeah, right?
But write
Come
me the
on.
check.
That's right. You don't have to pay me anything. Yeah. That was, to me, that meant everything, being able to write them and tell them. And I have another story that I have not been able to sell about a real little boy who did something amazing. And I sent the story to his mom, and they were thrilled. And, and I've not been able to sell that story. I haven't given up on it. I have not given up on it because I feel that it is a wonderful story, and it is full of heart and sacrifice. And it's about a bond of a boy and his dog. Aww. And this dog, as a puppy, becomes deathly ill. And the vet bills are so expensive that the family just can't meet them all. He can't get all the treatment he needs. And this little boy is just desperate and determined to raise money to save this dog. And he I don't want to give the whole story away, but he sells something. One of his most treasured possessions, except the dog, who he loved more than anything. He sold his most treasured possessions to raise money to save the dog. And it's a true story. And
man,
I read it. I read what I've written, and not to sound vainglorious, it moves me. The story of this little boy and this dog, it moves me. The theme behind my own words that have tried to tell the story. And I think, how can somebody read this and not be emotional? Like, I get emotional when I read it.
Yeah.
And so this is why I'm not giving up on it. I'm just not. I'll keep sending it as long as I can.
You just have to find your version of Sarah, your editor, who is so passionate about dogs that she understands the value of that story.
Yeah.
You've got a fan in me with that story. I've got a dog who I've blocked from entering this room that I'm currently in. But otherwise, he's got all my attention and all my devotion.
Dogs are just there's something.
Oh my gosh.
There's something so otherworldly about the character and the soul of a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Dianna, this whole conversation has been so heartwarming and inspirational, and just, I thank you so much for coming on and spending so much time chatting with us about your books.
Oh, well, I'm so grateful to you for having me. Thank you.
Oh, of course. And we'll put all of the links in the show notes for people to go and check out Just One Pebble and James's Reading Rescue. I'm getting it confused with another book. Sorry. And yeah, I mean, check out Dianna's books. They're amazing. They're inspirational. They're great. You want them on your bookshelf. So.
Just One Pebble, I'm sure, will be, by the time this episode comes out, in 7 different languages.
Yes,
available around the world, no matter where you
That's
go.
my hope.
You can get it anywhere.
That is my hope. That'll be lovely. Thank you so much.
Dianna, so much.
Pleasure to meet you.
Thanks for listening this week.
Find all of our episodes and other associated links and information at linktree.com/verseshow.
Or reach out to us on Twitter. Thanks again, and we'll see you next verse.
Bye.